There's something so camp about modern German, though. You know what they call a mobile phone? It's just so typically camp. Mein Handy. Oh, wo ist mein Handy? Ich habe mein Handy verloren. Oh, that's my handy.
Are you hosting the BAFTAs this year?
I did not know.
No? Oh, it's a shame, because I was going to say you should do it in that voice.
No, I'm welcome to the BAFTAs. Stop it! No. Who was it who made Chachoba famous?
Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly, exactly, did a famous routine about Chachoba. What's that? What the fuck's that? Chachoba? Chachoba? He has a way of repeating words, Billy Connolly, that I remember many years ago. And the phone rang, and it was Billy Connolly. He didn't introduce himself. He just went, Benjamin Netanyahu? And I said, what? He said, Benjamin Netanyahu? And I said, sorry, who is this? He went, Benjamin Netanyahu? What's that about? For fuck's sake, Benjamin Netanyahu? And he put the phone down. I thought, it was Billy Connolly riffing on the name Benjamin Netanyahu. My grandfather always used to call Pythagoras Pythagoras because he was Hungarian, my grandfather. He said, you go to school, you'll learn about Pythagoras. And I was thinking, who's this Pythagoras? And I remember saying, and I came out, he said, did you do the Pythagoras? I said, no, we've not done any Pythagoras. He said, you ask your mathematics teacher, he must do the Pythagoras. And I said, are we going to do Pythagoras? He goes, shut up, Fry. So I did Pythagoras, and years later I discovered he meant Pythagoras. He used to pronounce pineapple upside down cake, Piniopli obshide dovne tsoka. And then in the Australian Morning Bulletin, which of course is called The Bully, they said there was an error printed in a story titled Pigs Float Down the Dawson on page 11 of yesterday's Bully. The story by reporter Daniel Burden said that more than 30,000 pigs were floating down the Dawson River. Actually, what the owner of the piggery said was that 30 sows and pigs. We'd like to apologise for the error. There's a story of Brendan Byrne in Canada. Do you know this? He was on Canadian television and drunk, as he always was. They said, so what brings you to Canada, Mr. Behan? And he said, well, now, I was in a bar in Dublin and they had one of those coasters and it said on it, drink Canada dry, so I thought I'd give it a shot.
Watch too many of those horror films where it's always the phone call came from
inside the house. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, if they're not in the house, they can't get you. Your horror movies sound fine.
There's so many genres, and sometimes there's the cabin in the woods genre, and the high school ones, and
there's camp ones.
Camp ones, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, not camp in the sense of.
No.
Camp horror would be quite fun, wouldn't it? Ooh! Ooh!
You gave me a start.
What was the first invention to break the sound barrier?
Mae West vibrator.
Cannonball, musket fire, catapults.
Whoa, hello.
Oh.
No, not the cannonball.
I spelt it wrong, points to me. There's two ends in cannon, isn't there?
Three, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, one on the end, but
Yeah, yeah.
in the middle.
In the middle too, yes, yeah.
Otherwise, otherwise it's a ball of religion.
Yes, we thought it might be... Exactly. We thought it was Bobby and Tommy, you know.
Hey!
Hey! You're looking at me! Looking at me! Stop looking!
It's McGowan, watch out!
Those strange women on Desert Island Discs. Did you ever hear Diana Mosley?
No, she liked a bit of Wagner.
She did like Wagner, but she liked Hitler and met him many times. She said, well, what people don't understand is how funny he was. He was very funny. You know, his eyes were quite blue. Oh, yes, they were quite blue.
Makes it all right.
Quite blue. One scene never forgotten. Well, that's all right, then. I met her, and she said to me, of course, you never knew Hitler, did you? Well, you know, of course, guards were indeed there were lots of stories about men doing things with guardsmen in the 50s and 60s. And that story of Churchill who was woken up one morning when he was Prime Minister in the 50s. And he said, I'm afraid there's a bit of a scandal, Prime Minister. There's one of our backbench MPs was found with a guardsman in St James's Park in the bushes last night by the police, and the papers have got hold of it. Churchill said, last night? I said, yes. Churchill said, very cold last night, wasn't it? And the PPA, who said, well, yes, actually, Prime Minister, I believe it was one of the coldest February nights for 30 years. Churchill said, makes you proud to be British. The voice of your forefathers there, the ancestors, isn't it? Keeping a welcome in the inside, isn't that? So, before we start...
Were they Pakistanis?
Stop it right now. I'm going to lay down the law. Like the teacher's first day at school, he's strict just so that people are afraid of him.
Trying to get all umpteen.
Yes.
Before we start.
Mocking my Welsh accent.
Northern Europe. From Cape Town. Welcome to the valleys in Cardiff.
This is my accent. You stop halfway through, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yes.
It's gone all street now. Yeah, I stop halfway through, innit? That's like that.
Right, OK, all right.
Stephen Fry, yeah, QI, that's it.
The Titanic Museum in Belfast, which is quite good. They... Brilliant, it's quite good.
You better do a bit better there at Belfast now. Yeah, not good enough, really, for Alan.
That's one of his best ones.
What's Chewbacca like? Try and ignore, Stephen.
Laugh it up, fuzzball. Yeah, but this particular chase happened, as I say, in '64, but in 1982, a man called Brian, which is a good Irish name, told the Liverpool Echo that he had been working in the park when some children saw him and mocked him for his height, or rather lack of it. And so, joining in the sport, he spoke in sort of sort of Irish gibberish. I know, I'm sorry, I'm doing what he did. Threw sods of earth at them, and they ran away frightened, thinking he was a leprechaun. So, because they called him a leprechaun.
Came back with their
They
brothers.
said, oh, you're a leprechaun. And he went, I am that. And so they all said, we saw a leprechaun. We saw, saw a real one. Saw a real leprechaun in the park. And so all these kids went, they all invaded it.
Like a lost episode of Brookside.
In 2012, a paper called Gynecomastia in German Soldiers, Etiology and Pathology, looked at the number of breast reductions that were taking place among male members of the German army. 212 German soldiers have had this procedure, which is not inconsiderable, considering him being a male soldier. It's presumably embarrassing.
Yes, exactly. I just thought, wouldn't it go away?
Yeah, but the modern German army is... forget all your notions of the Nazi army. We're whole new peoples, We're very at ease with our inner woman, It's really... There's no embarrassment. I can show you my breasts. And I'm not embarrassed at all. It's fine.
Do you not think that's an incredibly sexy accent? It really is.
Levity was our theme.
Leviticus. So shellfish and...
Well, we didn't hear any shellfish, did
No, we didn't.
No.
Unless... I'm sure about
An owl,
Yeah.
a beard being shaved, the rending of cloth, and a pig.
So they're all things prohibited.
Anything to do with a pig is forbidden.
Yeah.
Brian Blessed, you can't have Brian Blessed. No, Brian Blessed is not kosher. No. But instead in Glasgow they call it a stoner. Do you know what a stoner? Do you know what it means? Yeah, it means an erection. It means a stuffy, aye. That's the Scottish accent, apparently.
Which part of Scotland was that?
Well, the part I loved, there's a marvellous story about Maggie Smith when she was going to play Miss Jean Brodie, and she was going, oh, God, I can't do a bloody Scottish accent. And a friend of hers said, well, I've got an aunt who lives in Morningside, which is just the right area for Jean Brodie, that very refined Scottish accent. So call her up and, offer to take her out to tea. And so Maggie Smith called up and said, hello, my name's Maggie Smith. I don't know if you know the novel The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. She said, but I'm playing that character, and apparently you have a very, very charming Morningside accent, and I'd like to take you to tea, and maybe with a tape recorder. And there was a very frigid pause. She said, my dear, I have been told I have no accent whatever. Completely insulting. And there are Scots. I remember talking to one Scot
who spoke a form of Scottish where he was convinced that everyone thought he sounded English. There is absolutely nothing I am saying which ought to lead you to believe that I am Scottish. Absolutely every vowel is pure English, and yet it sounded more Scottish than the worst Glaswegian drunk in a Soho doorway. Carry on.
And you were doing so well.
Yes.
I know you. They hear that voice, I know what goes there.
Really, I've got to say, Stephen, it's been a bewildering array of sketches.
Another man I was very proud to have met, the Hammer film of the Witchfinder General, starred Vincent Price. You just wanted to say things like, could you pass the mustard to me? I would appreciate a napkin. I got him to say the line that I loved. It was from one of those films where he's kind of strangely bound up in some weird bandages. Pray speak quietly. Every sound you make is exquisite agony to me.
It's usually Australians. Australians get it right. I was on an Ansett flight from Perth to Adelaide, and he started off by saying, oh, we're on our way to Adelaide. Adelaide is not your final destination. Now would be an ideal time to deplane. And then he sort of started talking about the safety. He said, but that's enough yakety-yak from me. He said, it's time to push some service down the aisles and some scenery past the window. In the olden days,
Yeah.
a certain class of person virtually ruled the roost in Britain, and that was an aristocrat.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely shocking people.
And you had to throw yourself into the gutter if one approached you.
Well, sometimes they had strong, stern and absurd moral views. And...
So they weren't allowed to walk?
Well, yes, if you
Side by
imagine,
side.
I'm not having the working classes next to each other in the street, because it can only lead to touching.
I know you think you're doing a voice, but that is how you talk.
There's no difference. Like a hair's breadth.